Hello, good evening, and welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and those who identify otherwise. I'm Oliver Anderson, Mr. One of Oliver, and behind the cameras, as always, Grandpa Chris Hill. Here as we get ready for the fourth round of the Tuesday Night Sprint Championship of the 9th season here on the Simsport Racing International YouTube channel. Has it really already been that long? I guess so. Time really flies by. We all remember Season 1, of course, way back when. Although we don't remember that much from Season 1, but we do remember it happened, of course. Anyways, tonight we are racing at Zandvoort in the mighty country of the Netherlands. A track that are very prone in assets course competition, at least for tire heating. Controlling the temperatures in the tires will be crucial tonight. Even though it's a 60-minute race and with a mandatory pit stop for tire changes, that will be a huge factor on this one. How much pressure do you put into the tires? How can you keep within both pressure range and temperature range? That will be up to the drivers, of course, and we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. Zandvoort, of course, tricky track, a lot of tight corners, not that many great overtaking opportunities, but we have seen some monster overtakes around here in the last couple of seasons, especially into turn 1 and 11. But we'll get more into that later on in the race. I do believe we have a track guide link somewhere in the archives. Oh, and we already have it. On the rundown, the start-finish straight as we start our lap. Coming into turn 1 of Tarzan. A little bit more banked in real life in later years, and the pit lane exit have also been changed, but still a very difficult corner with banking on, of course. Small straight, the left-right handers through Garlack into Hugenholz. The banked almost 180-degree hairpin at the sort of the infield part of the track. Before the long run, it's full throttle from this point up to turn 7 through Hansrug, of course, and Slutzmacher later on the straight. It is not advised to go side by side through here. That will be very challenging, but we have seen it before. Overtaking opportunities into Shavilak. For some reason, Dutch people like to give us names that we can't pronounce. Turn 7, that will be. Before Masters the turn 8. Important to get the car all the way to the left before turning in, hitting that apex with as much speed as possible, and then the tricky braking zone into turn 9. Different lines have been seen over the last couple of seasons, but going all the way out, and not a lot of drivers do that, as some of them like to keep the corner of turn 10 open, as this determines the speed onto the sort of back straight of the track. Full throttle into the Hans Ernst complex of 11 and 12. The very hard braking zone into Hans Ernst. The right-hander here with the left-hander following. We can definitely see overtakes happening here through the race, and also a prone place for mistakes and other things that could happen there before Kumho of turn 13. I don't think we could say ho that much on the YouTube, but definitely we can tonight before Ari Leuchenduk, the final corner of the track, or Lundijk, some might say. The pit entry on the right-hand side, though, that will be interesting later on in the race. It is tricky to get that one right. The pit boards come a lot earlier than most drivers expect, and it is so easy to get caught out for speeding there. But we'll see if that becomes an issue for the drivers in the race. Not the most prone track for track cuts in general, so that shouldn't become too much of an issue as we go into this evening's race. I'm just trying to figure out if I can find some championship standings, and of course I could, just to have a look at what's going on in the championships. It does look to be a little bit of a one-horse race with Michael Thomas so far on for the perfect season, 3 wins in a row. With the scratch result, then it's just 2 wins that he's counted for. Tej Fredriksson in second. Michael Thomas on 50 points, by the way. Tej Fredriksson in second with 42, scored for 2 second place, and a third that he got scratched from round 1. Liam Walsh in third. The big surprise this season, I would say, Walsh have done surprisingly well so far, on 39 points, a second and a third to his name. Benjamin King in fourth with 30 points, and Jordy Peters rounds out the top 5 with 28. That was the pro standings. Of course, 3 championships going on in simultaneously in these races. In the silver class, it is Patrick Blisters, also with 2 race wins to his name on a perfect 50 points, who leads it out directly ahead of Brem Loop on 36. Actually a tie for second with Nilsson Abrinosa, also on 36. Mick Schilligan's in fourth on 30, and Patrick Travers rounds out the top 5 there on 28 points. Very, very tight indeed throughout. In the AM class, though, it is Shuk Vivard that leads with 50 points. Also 2 race wins to his name, and then a 7th in the third race that got scratched. Not so dominant with Carmelo Sacraviligali in second on 42, and Brent Lamers in third with 39. Van Dosberg in fourth on 31, and Steve Allen rounds out the top 5 on 24 points. Just something to look out for in the race, how those championship stands. We'll look definitely more into that as we come into the final round of the season in about 2 weeks' time. We do have some calendars laying around somewhere. Sound of papers being flipped. Perfect. The Tuesday night championship, as we see on the screen, we are at Zandvoort, the 4th round of the championship. The 60-minute race, of course, which means mandatory tire change in the pits before we round out at Valencia, a track that lends itself very, very well to good close racing. Track cuts galore at that one, and the 75-minute race at Valencia also means that the drivers only have to take fuel in the pits. They can take tires as well, but that is optional for the drivers. On the Sunday nights, we also have a championship going that also only lacks 1 race of the championship. That will be held at Circuit of the Americas on the on Sunday, the 18th of May. 60-minute race there to round off the season. Also very, very tight and interesting in the championship standings for that one. So I definitely recommend tuning in to have a close look at the motor racing when we go live at Circuit of the Americas on the 18th of May. Final championship that we have on our broadcasting schedule, at least, would be our LMU championship, the SLMS championship, where we just finished Spa-Francorchamps last week. The first of 5 races in the multi-class Le Mans style championship, where we head on to Monza in about a week and a day's time for a 60-minute race there. Interesting season with Sebring coming up with the concrete parts of the track. Of course, the famous Le Mans circuit, the one and major track in the championship that we basically have to go to every season to make it through, and then finishing out at the endurance layout of Bahrain. But yeah, Monza in about a week's time. That will be interesting with the hypercars coming into turn 1. No ABS and no tire warmer, so that is definitely going to be an action-packed start once we get there. But all focus on tonight's race, as it looks like qualifying have just about started, following Nick Vargas, who are doing very well in the Sunday championship, to be perfectly honest, in the title battle there. coming off of a strong result of second at Kyalami last time out. Not to spoil that one if you haven't watched it yet, but definitely worth a watch, as he will be the first driver to start a flying lap here in qualifying at Zandvoort. 20 minutes of qualifying in total. It's all about getting the fastest lap, which will determine the starting lineup for the race. And at a track like Zandvoort, where it's so difficult to get the overtakes done, qualifying could be very important for these drivers to get right. So Vargas we are following on both the main screen and the small screen in the bottom right hand corner. That would be the onboard feed of Nick Vargas, the Mode 11 driver. Do remember out there on YouTube, if you have questions that you would like to get answers to, then write them in the YouTube chat and we'll try and answer them during the race. There's also the opportunity to shout out your favorite drivers that you might want to have a little bit of a look at during the race or qualifying indeed. But Vargas coming around through the unnamed corners of the track. I'm not going to try and pronounce the corners during the race. They will just be the corner numbers, I think. Oh, we could probably have that one. Screw it, I'll try and pronounce them at some point if I feel like it. But yeah, Vargas keeping it very tight. Don't think his first time lap will be the one that will put his final time in for qualifying. It is all about getting a banger in early. Traffic could become a huge issue in qualifying tonight. A lot of cars out there on track and not so much space. I don't think the traffic as per se could be an issue, but yellow flags and cars going off track and then maybe trying to rejoin could be the thing. 1 minute 35.3 to beat for Nick Vargas, immediately beaten by King and Alderman. That goes slightly quicker. Michael Thomas, championship leader, puts a lap time in but gets beaten by von Liebenstein. This could potentially be the best opportunity all season to beat out Michael Thomas, as the Mustang is not particularly good around here at Zandvoort. We have never seen top results from the Mustang around here, so he is surely in for an interesting race, Michael Thomas, but nothing is done yet, as we can already see the traffic being a big thing. Party stuck behind another Ferrari. Of course, once you have started a flying lap, then you don't have to give up room on the track for the drivers who are on their flying laps, but it does look like that a Partis is on a flying lap and the cars ahead might not be, as they show up as blue on the minimap, as Partis looks to have bailed off and just trying to get some room for the next attempt. Partis in the Alpha Simsport Ferrari. Good livery on that car. Pops very nicely in the eyes. Does remind me a little bit of the old CBSR livery, same color scheme in general. As Partis comes around and gets to start another flying lap. First one 6 seconds off due to slowing down, trying to get some room, as we can see cars leaving the pit lane and might be getting in the way later on. I think that's Alderman that came out directly ahead of Partis, so maybe not the biggest of issues there for Partis this time around. Nard Cox, we haven't seen him put an actual qualifying lap in all season, as he likes to start from the back of the field and try to work his way through. That will be a challenge and a half tonight, and I don't think this would be the best result of on the season for Nard. It's a little bit of a shame that he doesn't qualify and try to go for the outright wins, as he is a very, very quick driver who could be in competition for those top spots. Usually he would be teammates with Sim Spinkelink, who together they have had some dominant performances in the sprint championships as the Dark Sky Racing team over the last couple of seasons, or maybe not in the later seasons, as Nard have liked to do this, not qualifying and starting from the back for quite some time at this point. He likes the challenge, of course, of passing all the other drivers. That will get increasingly more difficult as he runs up through the field. We do see Nard trying to invalidate his lap times on purpose to ensure that he starts from the back. Not entirely sure if he have been successful this lap, but we might get an answer coming down the start-finish straight. Whoop, there you go. Maybe not actually, but let's see as he's on the run. Ah, now, there you go. There you go. a little bit distracting for Vargas behind. Maybe as Vargas finishes the lap and pulls off to the right to go back into the pits for fresh tires and fuel. That is the main thing of qualifying. A lot of different strategies on a track like this. I'm not entirely sure what would be the most viable one. I have been caught out in traffic around here a few times when I've tried going for the multi-stop strategy in qualifying, of going in and taking tires quite a few times. So that will be interesting to see who goes deep and carries a lot of fuel. Some drivers do like to just go out on track and keep pushing for the laps and stay in the rhythm. Others, they will do maybe one or two flying laps, come in for fuel and tires, and then go straight back at it again. But yeah, that's all a matter of preference. The drivers, they do have enough tire sets to do whatever they please, basically, in qualifying. So that will be interesting. Following Nilsson Abrinosa around, who is in the challenge for the Silver Championship. So he could potentially be looking for a big result here at Zandvoort. One of the few drivers who doesn't have the advantage of this being his home track. But let's see what he does. 23rd at the minute, 2.1 seconds behind the fastest lap times currently, but that could all change, of course, as there's still 12 minutes in qualifying. Benjamin King of the PSUK team down the start-finish straight. Let's see if he jumps up from 9th. He does. He jump all the way up to 2nd position and jumps onto the front row of the grid in the Lamborghini. Currently Van Liebenstein leading in the Honda. Michael Thomas all the way down in 4th. This could be the race that takes away the perfect season results-wise for Michael Thomas. But we'll know more about that in about an hour and 15 minutes time. All the men we're following currently set in 8th position in his Aston Martin. He have had a little bit of bad luck on the in the races as of late, but let's see what he does tonight. Very quick driver in general, I must say. Coming around the corners onto the back straight. A little bit of traffic, he might get the advantage of slipstream, and if he's very quick through the final section of the track, he could get a nice tow up to the start-finish line. That could potentially help him out. Currently improving by enough to snatch away provisional pole, so that could be interesting. He needs a good run there, and he goes very wide. I don't think it's enough to invalidate, but that will not be good for lap time. Let's see as he comes onto the start-finish straight, and across the line he goes and jumps up into 5th. 170 thousandths behind. That's basically all the time that he lost there by going off track. All the men could potentially be in with a challenge for the pole tonight, as Michael Thomas have gone up and challenged for front runner on the grid, just 7 thousandths of a second behind Van Liebenstein now. Further down the field, Lamers coming around for the Brent Performance team. I highly assume that that's named after himself, Brent Lamers, in the 777 Porsche. Into the two final corners he goes. Actually surprisingly tricky, the final part of that double right-hander. Around here we do often see drivers getting 2 wheels over the curbing and the AstroTurf, especially as we come later into the race. He does improve, gets himself within 3 seconds of the fastest lap, 2.9 behind the current pole sitters. Which is, to be honest, not too bad around a track like Zandvoort. Very, very tricky track to drive. And the gaps are expected to be rather high between top and bottom. I would have thought it to be larger, to be honest, before heading into to qualifying, but seems tight enough at the minute. Bas van Melles in his Ford Mustang. Home field hero, some might say. A big fan support for Bas out there, we do know. The one-handed menace, Mr. Slug himself, as he comes up the sort of twisty-ish straight section of the track. No one is entirely sure whether or not that the orange color on the car is to represent the Netherlands, or if it is to make himself more visible for other drivers. last time I spoke with him, he did say that it was to make himself more visible, but deep within we all know it's the Dutch national color, and that might be the reason why he rocks it. It does look very nice on that Mustang, I must say. The color scheme and the general livery of the Mode 11 cars, very, very fitting to the car. I do believe originally designed for the BMW M4. That might be the reason why it looks so stunning on the Mustang as well. 2 corners to go for Van Melis before he have a chance to improve through Lundijk and onto the start-finish straight. Just touching the grass, I don't think he will have lost too much on that. Over the line, still 14 for Bas. 7 minutes 50 to go. Chris winning in 16th. Coming into the Hans Ernst complex. Taking advantage of the Aston Martin being strong on the curbs there, plowing over the inside curb. A little bit of a touch there out in the grass, but I don't think that hinders him too much as it was a short straight. Through Ari Lundijk we go for Chris winning onto the start-finish straight. Gets it perfectly through there. He does look to be improving. Let's see, a cross line up into 10th for Chris winning in the Aston Martin. Just 0.7-ish behind Michael Thomas, who have gone on to a provisional pole. Tej Fredriksson currently sat in 5th as he rounds turn 10 and goes on to the back straight. Right behind Nick Vargas that he might get towed a little bit by. Vargas a quick driver as well, so if Tej can stay close enough to Nick there, then he could potentially also get the slipstream on the start-finish straight. That could help him drastically, as he only needs 0.2 of a second to go up and challenge Michael Thomas for pole position. Around the final corner, Tej Fredriksson goes. Let's see as he comes up to the line. He is tucked into a little bit of slipstream. And provisional pole for Tej Fredriksson. New fastest lap of the section. Oh, sorry, of the session. 1:34.4. As he goes into the pits for a fresh set of tires. Presumably one more run for Tej there. Florian Arf currently sat in 11th, following around him in his McLaren. Does go a little bit wide, opens up turn 10 as much as possible, as early on the throttle as possible as well. Running a little bit wide, I think that will hinder his top speed quite a bit and lose some time as he comes into the Hans Ernst complex. Around he went, car there on the inside. Don't think that slowed him down at all, but let's see. 2 corners to go, the double right-hander through Comho. Ah, that's why it's called that. And into Ari Lundijk. Comho and Lundijk. Nothing more needs to be said there, I assume. Still 11 for Florian Arf. But still, the entirety of the top 10 plus Arf within a second of each other. Bram Loop coming up to the line. Does he improve? He does, up into 11th. He takes silver pole at the minute. Or provisional silver pole, we should say, as he puts it up into 10th position. Oh, now dropping to 11th as someone else improved. Strong left from Bram Loop there. Benjamin King we're looking at once again, as I do think that he is improving as he comes through the final couple of corners. Onto the main straight of the mighty Zandvoort. The ocean winds are not blowing too strong across the line. Still 5th for Benjamin King there. Not improving last time out after all. Von Leemstein, who have been all the way up there challenging for pole earlier on in the session. Let's see what he can do when he comes across the line in his mighty Honda NSX. A little bit of an improvement and 4th, but not that much at the end. But look at that, just a few thousandths of a second behind Jordy Peters in 3rd. As Von Leemstein, of course, chooses to continue to go. Ooh, that could have lost him a little bit there. Not the best of entries into the 180 corner of Hugenholz. Steve Parker across the line. Improves to 29th after he just had a banker lap on the board. I don't think Van Dosberg will be attempting to set a lap time either, as he hasn't been out on track all session. I guess he won't be, Blisters won't be, I've been told. Either. Have not actually set a time? No, he's just not on the... Yes, not have actually set a lap time this time around. He messed up his usual strategy, and that's might be the reason why he's in the pits. He's up into 17th, is Nart Cox, just behind Bas Van Melis. As we're following Steve Parker around. With a Ferrari chasing closely behind, but do remember Steve doesn't have to get out of the way for him, as he is on a flying lap himself. Vargas also coming up behind. Down the back straight we go. Vargas makes the overtake on both of them as Parker pulls over to the side, the Drift King himself. Sjukvevard, AM-class championship leader. Currently set in second position grid-wise for the AM class in this race, with his championship rival on provisional AM pole. Sjukvevard coming around, that is definitely invalid as he runs wide. Flashing the lights, probably not too happy with something that's gone up ahead. He will only have one more shot at this as time. Now he will actually have two more attempts on this if he's quick enough, and he will be, because that's not so good. He could potentially still go into the pit, and if he's very, very quick about it, he can go out for another run. But then I feel like he should have stopped an RTG there. Liam Walsh coming over the crest of Chevrolet before heading into Masters in the 420 Ferrari, the PS UK car. Opting for a light blue and white color scheme makes it somewhat easier to spot. Onto the back straight, less than 2 minutes to go, so everyone starting a lap time now. They will definitely be on their final attempt. Do remember, if you're starting a lap time before the timer hits 0, you are allowed to finish a lap, and that could become crucial for some of these drivers. Walsh will have this one and one more if he is fueled for it. As he went through Kumho and into Ari Lundijk. Full throttle up, he is improving. Is it enough to beat out Benjamin and Von Liebenstein? Does beat out Benjamin King for 5th. Initially at least, as Von Liebenstein will not be improving any more in this qualifying as he have gone into the pits. Same goes for Van Melis, Nart Cox, Florian Arf, Nilsson Abrinosa, and quite a few others are starting to return to garage as they might messed up on their final attempts or just simply ran out of fuel. Following Jordy Peters, who are currently set in 3rd place in this qualifying session as he went through Masters. Saw a car spun out there ahead of him. Rounding the corner into 10. As early on the throttle as possible to get the maximum drive into Hans Ernst. As we see him going flying, and as time have run out in qualifying, so it is definitely all the drivers on a flying lap now. It will be their final attempts. Maximum pressure on the drivers. Michael Thomas provisionally on pole, but let's see if Jordy Peters will be the challenge. Rounding the final corner, he does need about 0.3 of a second. It doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, when you're behind the wheel of a racing car, that is a lot of time to find. As he does improve by quite a bit and jumps up into 2nd. Just not enough to beat out Michael Thomas, but a P2 initially at least for Jordy Peters as Fredriksson comes across the line. He'll be 3rd on the grid if Alderman and Vargas can't beat him out. Further down the field, Parties, we did see him being stuck behind Steve Parker there before, not being able to find a clean way through, but this is Parties' final shot at this in the 195 Ferrari. Through Ari Lundijk he goes. Let's see if he improves. From 18th position, does he improve? Yes, up into 11th he went Jordy Peters. Oh sorry, not Jordy Peters. Parties. They are too close in names. Very, very much so. Brim loop across the line. 12 it looks like. As qualifying have ended. Which means, of course, the mandatory 5-minute break in commentary before we come back with the race start. Still wish we had some commercials we could play, but let's just pretend that we are that fancy that we have actual commercials to play. But we'll be right back after these imaginary commercials. As we are back, just as the drivers are ready to roll out on the formation lap. The pack will be led once again by Michael Thomas, but much closer in qualifying than we're used to. Surely he'll be challenged in this race by Jordy Peters and Tess Fredrickson from behind, as they have started rolling out. All drivers, they'll probably be having a little bit of extra focus of getting those tires into to temp and brakes for on the formation lap this time around. As you really, if you're starting out position, really needs to gain some positions in the opening phases of the race if you want to bring something home from this one, as all the drivers have started rolling. Some drivers like to generate the heat by weaving, others prefer to generate the heat by just running with a foot on the brake and then monitoring the temperatures nice and closely. It is a very different from driver to driver what the preferred way of heating the tires are. Some even have some special brake bias modes for warming up the tires, just as we see in Formula 1 with Lewis Hamilton's famous magic button that some of us might remember from a few seasons ago at Baku, but that is a long time ago at this point. 60 minutes of racing ahead of us here in the Dutch vacational town of Zandvoort. Actually a really nice golf course next to the track, and good public transport opportunities as well from Amsterdam and out here, as the virtual fans have shown up in droves around on the sandy dunes next to the racing track. Not a lot of wind, or any wind that is noticeable, at least on the track. 1 kilometer wind, as you can see in the top right of the screen. The arrow indicates where the wind is hitting the car that we're currently following. Track temp and ambient temp next to that. Track temp not too hot, but still 29 degrees. That could be playing a little bit of a factor with the tires in this race. 22 ambient though will be perfect virtual racing weather, with slightly overcast predictions for the first 30 minutes of the race. As the drivers are starting to line up in double file and getting ready to go racing, just need the tail end of the field to catch up, and they will be on their toes to try and time their launch off the line as good as possible. Not entirely sure why Jordy Peters is driving behind Michael Thomas, although there Michael Thomas pulls over to the right and gets ready for the start, as we're going through Ari Lundijk for the first time in the actual race session, as all the drivers are coming up to the start-finish line. As, ladies and gentlemen, we are shortly about to be racing. Very good launch there from Jordy Peters. Drive through already for Chris Winning further down the field. Peters taking the start. Looks like that Fredrickson also about to lose out there, but not entirely. Though Michael Thomas strikes back through Tarzan. Michael Thomas leading the race after just a few corners. No yellow flag so far. Clean start from all the drivers. But Thomas under extreme pressure, as I said that someone was moving slow at the back end of the field. But Thomas under pressure from the start, followed closely behind by Jordy Peters and Tess Fredrickson and Samuel von Liebenstein in the Honda just behind these drivers. Closely contended. I think that was the 74 car that got into a little bit of difficulties there early on. Fredrickson in third. He will need some good points today if he wants to challenge Michael Thomas for the overall championship. He really can't afford to be slouching about. He needs to get some overtakes done and get up into that first position. Benjamin King in sixth, right in the middle of where we would expect there to be a lot of exchanges for positions in the race. A ton of equally paced drivers down here, with Benjamin King currently set in sixth. We can see all the men, and that'll be Vargas and Garcia behind the two Mode 11 cars. And just up ahead of King will be Walsh and von Liebenstein. who have pulled a tiny bit of a gap early on in the race, but that surely can harmonica down once we get into the braking corners. Early pit stops there in the background, getting out of traffic. That wasn't Aston Martin, that was Chris Whitting. No, that's the drive-through that he's just serving early on. Good start from Scaviligali in the aim class, though. He's leading that in 19th position. Brim Loop leading the silver class, but a lot of pressure behind as they're going side by side just behind him. But Brim Loop in 11th position, under a lot of pressure from Milan Dumas and Florian Arf behind, as they came through Hugenholz, going up through Hunsrück as we are speaking. Big section of the track. Surprised that we haven't seen anyone go flying off into the gravel trap yet, but we could potentially see that later on in the race. See how they go through here. A little bit of a Constantina behind. I think that is Partis, and who's ahead of Partis? No, that might be Loop ahead of him. No, that's just the pause I'm thinking about. It is Loop that the Constantina is happening behind. Milan Dumas currently in frame in the Minotaur racing car. Used to be a Green Moose racing driver, Milan Dumas, way back in the days. But performing strong in the 68 Ferrari. Matt Ayling, 14th position, second in silver class in his McLaren. Van der Kran right behind him and Bas Vermelis further back, but Ayling could potentially be looking at a move on Florian Arf coming into Tarzan, as he's very much tucked into the slipstream behind. Maybe a little bit too far back to really go for the launch up there, but stays behind wisely. Gap was open on the inside line though, as both drivers misses the apex by a little bit, which leaves the opportunity for Van der Kran to catch up or close the gap at least a little bit. As it looks like Arf also very close there to Dumas. Very tight early on in the race. Liam Walsh up into 5th position in the race so far. He's right behind von Liebenstein, as Thomas have already gapped Peters by 1.5 seconds for the lead battle, so Thomas is just running away, or trying to at least early on. But Liam Walsh had a good season so far. Let's see what he'll be up to in this race. Von Liebenstein ahead in the Honda. Could be a difficult car to overtake, as we do know the Honda is very good in these 60-minute races. It is a little bit aggressive on the tires, usually the Honda, that could come into play later on. But for these 60-minute races, he only have to stay on the same rubbers for about 30 minutes. As we see all of the cars going through the very slow section of Hans Ernst before Kumho. Ooh, 2 cars going wide there. That's Florian Arf and Matt Ayling in the 2 McLarens. No, that not Arf, that was Milan Dumas and Florian Arf, it looked like, in the Ferrari and McLaren. Onto the start-finish straight we go. Still not quite close enough to try and pull anything off into turn 1. It is difficult staying close enough through Kumho to set it up through Ariel Lundijk and then into Tarzan. But rounding Tarzan, look how close they are when they go through there. We have seen overtakes previously into Hugenholz turn 3 that we're heading into now, on board with Florian Arf. As we can see just how close the cars are running on track. But at this point in the race, the drivers might be just thinking a little bit about not going too aggressively and waiting for the field to spread out just a little bit more before really attempting the overtakes. But that's something that's very interesting. Let's try and stay on board with Florian Arf as we go through Masters. Difficult corner, hits the curb there nicely. Could have carried a tad more speed, going for the wider setup into 9. And then into 10 he can open up a little bit more than the rest of the drivers. But a late apex for Florian Arf as we're heading onto the back straight. A little bit of an oversteer moment there from Arf. That could allow Matt Ayling to close the gap down into Hans Ernst, and maybe an attempt for Matt Ayling to try and set it up down through Kumho and Ari Lundijk. From the exterior again, up in the helicopter cams. Ayling actually pretty close to Arf this time, but Ayling rolling the dice a little bit there as he is running very wide putting 2 wheels on the grass on the exit of Ari Lundijk. That is basically the only place on the track where track warnings could potentially happen as he went through. But I don't think there'll be too much an issue. Further down the field, Cohen Geens right behind Skivilagali, who are leading the AM class. Cohen Geens would hope to make a short progress of this, but not that certain that it'll be that easy around the track like Zandvoort. Van Dryle right behind as well. Same with Wouter Wins and Nard Cox, who I think might have purposefully dropped to the back of the field early on to keep the challenge going from with starting from the back and moving up through the field. But Geens definitely tucked in as much as he possibly can. It is difficult staying close to other drivers around here. The dirty air really does play a trick on the cars. And you need to be quite a bit faster than the car that you're trying to overtake, or really risking it to stay close. Cohen Geens could, with a good slipstream, try the dive into to Hans Ernst. But if it goes wrong for Geens, he could potentially lose out 2 or 3 positions, staying behind for now. Not the best line for Skivilagali as he actually goes onto the gravel trap on the inside. That sets it up for Cohen Geens into Kumho. Maybe not the best place to try for. He does look to the inside, compromises Kumho a little bit, but gets a much better run. Actually have to go off the throttle there to avoid running into the back of Skivilagali, and that allows Van Dryle to get very, very close. I think Van Dryle also had to lift off there a little bit. Geens on Skivilagali, into Tarzan we go. Who will be the braver on the brakes? As we can see that just how close all of the cars are getting. Contact behind. That was Van Dryle that got turned a little bit around there. I think that was Wouter Wins that made the contact. But staying behind and keeping good sportsmanship there from Wins on Van Dryle. You can see Nard Cox looking all over the back of Wouter Wins as they went through Hugenholz on the run up through Honterok and into Slottermacher. Look at that, Nard really looks to have a lot of grip in that car, so he can take different lines to Wouter Wins. Trying for it, looking on the inside though, but he will have to tuck back in behind as an overtaking move into Masters can be so that he does go for it into to turn 9. And a Porsche spinning slightly in front of them that allows Wins to go through it, also overtaking almost the Porsche there. That was Casalili, and as we go back up to it, as Nard Cox makes the move actually on Van Dryle and gets it done, Wouter Wins simultaneously through turn 10. Wouter Wins on the inside though, that was never going to work from that distance, but it tried for it, at least just a bit of argy-bargy, and both cars stay on track. As Wins tried it there on Van Dryle, as they come into Kumho and Ari Lundijk here early on the race. 10 minutes have already passed in this race. Seems like we just started a few seconds ago of all the action that have kicked off so far. Wins still looking at the back of Jesse Van Dryle down the start-finish straight. Not quite close enough into Tarzan as Castellini goes into the pits to get some damage repairs, we presume, or just trying to get into a little bit of clean air, as that could be a potential strategy for some of the drivers around here. The tires should last the entire hour of the race, though there would definitely be some drop-off in the later stages, but track position-wise it could be a valid strategy. As Wins have dropped a little bit behind Van Dryle. Let's see if we can close up as we head into Sliviliak or Chivilak, something Dutch. Not a lot into Masters we go. Looks like that the Porsche of Van Dryle takes a slightly better line through and into the Constantina effect corners. This is so difficult getting the power on out of 9 as you're turning the wheels so much, and there's a little bit of off camber in the corner. It at least feels like it when you're driving the cars. As coming down the back straight. Further up the field we can see Cohen Geens have just made the move on Skivilagali and gotten himself up into 19th position. As he's making great progress in the race there, Cohen Geens early on, 2 seconds up to Nilsson Aprenosa now, but let's see if he can catch up. We know Cohen Geens have driven this track a few times before, so we might have a trick or two up his sleeves. Skivaligali leading the aim class. In good position, he might not be too interested in taking too many chances, Skivaligali, and focusing on getting those points for the aim championship, as he could get a really nice points haul over Shuk Vivard in this one, as Vivard is at 30th, and Vivard actually contact between Cox and Skivaligali side by side now. Skivaligali doesn't seem to let Nard through easily. A little bit of additional contact there from Nard, who is getting a little bit aggressive there with the aim leader, which leads Skivaligali vulnerable for Jesse Van Dryle. But as I was saying earlier, Shuk Vivard's scratch result so far this season is a 7th place. But that could potentially end up being this race if he doesn't get a move on. He is last in the aim class at the minute, I think. There might be a driver further down the road, but I think he is close to last, at least, Vivard in aim. And that could hinder his chances of getting a very, very good end to this. But it would open it up before the final round if this holds on. So we are just crossing our fingers, as we can see. Skivaligali now under pressure from Jesse Van Dryle behind. Skivaligali did have the good start to the race. Yellow flags further behind. That's Lamers, I think. Brendan Lamers have been around, and that's Misha Melis as well. That's good news for Shuk Vivard, but not for these drivers. I think Van Dosberg have also been involved in that one, as he also dropped quite a few positions. Meanwhile, Van Dryle all over the back of Skivaligali. Same for Wouter Vince right behind. I think Van Dryle had to lift off there, as he goes very defensive with Wouter Vince on the outside into Tarzan, trying the hero line. He will get early on the front Vince there from that line, but couldn't get the car turned quite in time. But these three running very, very close together into the hairpin we go. Almost contact there, as Vince have to turn a little bit out of the corner to avoid running into the back of Van Dryle, as they went through Hagenholz. I'm definitely going to get some messages from Dutch people of why I can't pronounce the corners around here, but so be it. Better line there from Vince through turn 7 and into Masters, but nowhere to go really with the speed. There's really only that one line through. Into 9, where we saw Nard make the move earlier, also an opportune place as you go so wide into the corner that you leave yourself vulnerable on the inside. Through 10, good line there from Vince coming out of the corner, but I don't think he's quite close enough to take advantage of the slight better speed. Into the corners now we go of Hans Ernst. The McLaren can be tricky from time to time to drive, as it is quite oversteery when you drive. It is gripping the track very well, but it is a little bit oversteery. That could be an issue with the tire temps around a track like Zandvoort, but it does lend itself to that aggressive driving. I think that was a disconnect there. Wouter Vince at least up into 21st position. I think that was Van Dryle who disconnected. Bit of a scary moment when you're driving behind a car that then all of a sudden disappears. But that is Van Dryle out of this one. Unfortunately, it looks like he could potentially rejoin the server, but would have to come back from a few laps down. Not optimum there, as Skivaligali could be under challenge later on from Shuk Vivard, who have gone up himself up into 2nd in the aim class. Further up the field, though, Van Leeuwenstein have caught up to Peters, as Frederiksen have also made the move and got himself up into 2nd, and he'll be the driver trying to chase down Michael Thomas now. But Van Leeuwenstein putting the pressure on Jordi Peters in the battle for 3rd and the final podium spot in this race. Less than 3 quarters to go in the race. Pit stops could be coming in basically from about the 40-minute mark. I would say you could go to the end without the tires starting to drop off at least significantly at Zandvoort, so that will be quite interesting to see when the pit stop round will begin. I think for the lead drivers, they will try and stretch it as long as possible to avoid getting into traffic when they come out of the pits, but for some of the midfield drivers and well, basically just for the midfield drivers, it could be viable to go in early. I think the back markers, they could potentially be coming out in traffic from or at least a blue flag traffic if they head in too early, and that could hinder them, of course, later on. Meraki and Bas Van Melis, 3rd place in silver, and then Bas 16th overall. In the battle here, the Ford Mustang, not known for being super nice to drive around Zandvoort, but Bas doing a very, very good job of it so far. We do know Van Melis does have a lot of focus on this championship itself. Maybe not as much the pace-wise for a track like Zandvoort, but keeping it consistent and clean, which he's usually very good at, I must say, Mr. Van Melis. Quite the experienced driver. But a lot of focus on Zandvoort is such a difficult track. You really just need to get into that rhythm. The second you get out of the rhythm around here, then you'll start to lose time. It's full concentration for the entirety of the race. Same goes if you're trying to or starting to drive a little bit slower to try and preserve something in the car, or just being safer. That's when you start to make the mistakes, and that could be very costly. As we did see Meraki there with a potential challenge from the City Walk team on Bas Van Melis. But it looked like that Mustang just have so much grunt coming out of the corners. Once that car gets going, it's difficult. Yellow flags behind us. That's the 711 car. That's Cohen Geens around in Hans Ernst. Same goes, I think that's the Cox as well. Cohen Geens and not Cox, so they could potentially have come together there. Geens trying to get back on track, but he's parked the complete wrong way. That could be difficult. Does find a good gap there to try and get going, as he does get going again without causing too much of an issue to any cars behind. I do think our camera crew are working on getting a replay of that as we are speaking. Meraki putting the pressure on Van Melis as they have gotten closer and closer together. As we were watching Geens rejoining the track. But Meraki definitely seems to have the pace in that Ferrari, but whether or not that he have the top end to actually pull through, because as we have talked about so many times before this season, one thing is to be quicker than the driver ahead of you, another thing is to get the overtake done. That can be so challenging, and once you get the overtake done, then you have to find your own rhythm again. After having been behind a driver that might just be a 10 for 2 slower than you per lap, but that can really put you off once you get out and clean, and can be difficult to break away after being stuck behind. But Meraki right up there behind Van Melis as we do get the replay of what happened. We can see Cohen Geens ahead of Nart Cox here. Don't look too close. I wonder if Geens just drops it. No, Nart Cox makes an uncharacteristic mistake and bumps him. And Cox does the right thing, tries to wait for Cohen Geens for as long as possible without overdoing it, as we see Nart gets going again there, but he did try and wait for Cohen Geens, as Geens just had no place to get started as he had so many cars coming through. Good sportsmanship though from Nart Cox, trying at least to give the position back, but unfortunately nothing that could have been done there. Second time this evening that we see Nart misjudging the distance of his, or the length of his own car, bumping into other cars. It is difficult on a track like Zandvoort, of course, as we have said many times before. And the Constantine around here is very big, as you have many corners where you are going very slow through, and then onto big straights you can catch up and then slow again afterwards. Florian Arf, the first driver to take the pits on merit. I don't think he had damage. I think he's just trying to get out in clean air. That could also be the call for Meraki to try and undercut Van Melis in this one. I don't think that he would get... Ooh, close through there, through Masters. This time Meraki on the outside into to 9. Outside becomes inside, that does become outside again. Van Melis on the defensive line. But a good drive from Van Melis, putting the car on the apex there, that sort of leaves Meraki no choice and having to back out of that one, as he could go nowhere with the overspeed he had. Very aware driving of Bas there, defending that one. Very skilled, it looked like. Meraki behind will have to try and find another opportunity to get past Van Melis and into Kumho we go. Meraki takes a much tighter line there, so it looks like he has much better tire wear at this point, as he can go those tighter lines and keeps it tight through Ari Lundijk down the front straight into Tarzan. Not close enough, but Bas still going into the defensive line there. It looked like running early. That really does allow Meraki to catch right back up coming out of Tarzan. It is optimistic to go for it into Hugenholtz, the 180-degree hairpin and the banked hairpin, but potentially it could be done. We have seen it before. Not as banked as in real life, though. They re-profiled the track for Formula 1 as when Formula 1 started racing here a few seasons ago. Not updated in the game yet, and I don't think it ever will be, as they have stopped working on as a course competition, unfortunately. Question in the YouTube chat: if you say Vandril instead of Vandril, it would be close to how Vandril is pronounced. I'll say Vandril every time. That's his name. That is the official name. We all know that. Kevin Meraki still on the back of Van Melis. This is a great battle that they are having between themselves. Van Melis does seem to be lacking a bit of pace to Meraki, but does manage to put the car at the right place at the right time, and does get that little bit of extra speed through Kumho that he can carry all the way into Tarzan and sort of fend off the attack. This time doesn't look as good on through Kumho, which allows Meraki to stay close to Van Melis all the way down. He does get the advantage of slipstream now, does Meraki. Can he try and throw out the lasso into turn 1 in the Tarzan corner? Not quite close enough still. That Mustang is so quick in a straight line as Meraki really misjudges turn 1 there. Hits the back of Van Melis, but chooses to stay behind. Cohen Geens once again spun around at Hans Ernst. Yellow flags as well for the 777 car. I can't remember who's driving that entry. That's Brent Lamers who have gone around in that'll be turn 9. Unfortunate for Lamers, as that will put a hinder on his chances in the race as he drops to 31st. Meraki is still pushing for it after having had to give up a little bit of time after contacting Bas and falling behind, staying behind. He does look very quick through Masters though. I think Meraki just needs to set it up correctly through Masters to get the run into 9 and then take opposite line of Bas there. This time he tries to get really nicely set up through 10. Bas losing the rear a little bit. He's very close now. He could potentially go for it into the Hans Ernst complex. Bas goes to the racing line, but not quite close enough still. Now it's the 24 car. Is that not Michael Thomas who have gone around in turn 1? Isn't he 20? No, that's Von Liebenstein that have gone around in turn 1. Big change up in the front then, as Von Liebenstein must be dropping a few positions. Matt Ailing coming into the pits. Again trying the, probably undercutting a little bit there. Race tires does give you quite the advantage in GT3 racing. Here's a replay of Brent Lamers. Rather long one. Let's see. Oh, he just runs wide there. I've done the same quite a few times going into the gravel trap, and then just a little bit too hard on the accelerator, trying when rejoining the track, gets him into the wall. Must have picked up a little bit of damage there. Then into Masters he went. And what does he lose it again through? Yeah, he does lose it again. Maybe that's the overheated tires after the initial spin puts it in the wall of 9. That could have given him some damage. Still, the battle rages between Meraki and Bas Van Melis. He did seem to have taken my advice, trying to get a set up there through Masters. This time on the outside, already through 9. This could be the move. He does try the switchback, but Bas is so wise that keeps covering off the inside line. I think Meraki should have tried staying on the outside there and forcing Van Melis not to be able to get as good of an exit. Ooh, this time contact again between the two of them. Almost synchronized, spinning around as Van Melis also contacts Abrinosa there, who spun around. That forces Vince to lose quite a bit of time trying to avoid that. But there's still Meraki and Van Melis close behind each other. And this battle could potentially go on all race. I think it will be a matter of who have the least damage, as Van Melis looks to be diving into the pits. No, he doesn't. He chooses to stay racing ahead of Meraki. Benjamin King into the pits, also trying the undercut. This time Van Melis defends the inside. Maybe Van Melis chose not to come into the pit to continue the battle, because it is very fun when you are engaged in these battles. And this could indeed be decided in the pits about who have the least amount of damage, unfortunately, between the two of them. And who opts to take the damage repairs. Behind them we see Nard Cox now, who have overtaken Wouter Vince, who are coming up to them. I wonder if they will take the pit stop before Cox gets an opportunity to overtake, because they could both lose time in that. So there could be strategy in that for the drivers as well. Van Melis takes the defensive line through Masters. Meraki with the better speed there, now on the outside into 9. Opposite of before, can he get the switch back on Van Melis? Looks like he got so close with Nard there as well. But now Meraki have to be wise about this, because Nard could go in and he blocks the opportunity to get the better run, as Nard takes 14th away from Meraki. Now Meraki immediately under pressure by Vince, who shows himself in the mirrors, and Meraki outbreaks himself again into Hans Ernst. This time it's Nard Cox he puts into a spin, as Vince gets overtaken as well by Chris Winning in all of this mess. Winning on Nard Cox. Contact again as Meraki tries to give the position back to Nard. Very messy indeed so far, and big gaggle of cars now. And Vince gets pushed wide there by Scavalgali, it looked like. Also, very, very big confusion there between all of the drivers, as they got into a kerfuffle as the pit stop round have really started to kick off, as we have reached roughly the halfway point of the race. Scavalgali under severe pressure from Abrenosa. Scavalgali just needs to keep his composure at this point. Let's see a replay of what happened to Liebenstein just a few laps ago. That puts a little bit of a spanner in his chase on the cars up ahead. So that's Peters directly ahead of him. I think he just loses. Yeah, he just loses the NSX. Ooh, went close to the contact there with. That's Liam Walsh in the beautiful light blue, almost cyan Ferrari. Scavalgali there almost looks like he lets the Ferrari of Abrenosa by. Definitely difference in braking there from the two drivers. Maybe Scavalgali have gone into a point now where he just needs to be composed, not losing too much to Vavard behind, keeping that gap in mind and not fighting these guys behind too much. Conti next car behind for actual position, then he'll have two cars that have already done their pit stops, as Vargas, von Liebenstein and Milan Dumas have come into the pits. I think from the front runners that are running in clean air, they'll probably stay out as long as possible to maintain clean air for the most amount of time, trying to avoid traffic. Bas Van Melis comes into the pits, as that could be a big change in the race. Let's see where he comes out. He surely will have some damage, but whether or not that Bas chooses to repair it, only time will tell. But you know what, Scavalgali haven't been dropped by Abrenosa. He's actually keeping with Abrenosa quite nicely, as they're coming onto the sort of back straight. Ooh, free car gaggle. That's Benjamin King and von Liebenstein and I think that's Tash Fredriksson maybe. No, that's Fredriksson we're following. That's Kilara in the Aston Martin that have actually gotten herself between the two top contenders of Benjamin King and Samuel von Liebenstein. Actually a pretty good livery on that Aston Martin as well. Sort of reminds me of the old Force India Formula 1 cars. Beautiful, beautiful the color combination there. Claria yet to pit, of course. Leonardo, so I think that would be a he. As he at that point just lets Benjamin King almost go through. Oh, it's not orange, it's actually red. It's the Italian national colors he's running, of course. Or the Italian tricolor. It would be, I think the national color would be some sort of lightish blue. which is also a pretty reasonable color to look at, to be straight with you guys out there. Chiara comes around. I wonder if Chiara will take the pit stop. Not, and Chris Winning comes in to serve their mandatory pit stop. Chiara runs a little bit wide there, puts two wheels into the grass. Not looking for pit lane this time. Further up the field, that is von Liebenstein on Sjouk Vivard. Sjouk not fighting that one. Ooh, almost running into the back of von Liebenstein there. But Sjouk not fighting that one. He knows he's in second in the AM class. Didn't look like that just a half an hour ago that would even be on the table for Vivard. But keeping it safe so far have really gained him a lot of positions. And I think that's really the trick to the AM class this season, is just keeping it clean. Then a lot of good things will come to you for these drivers. As Benjamin drive through for Cox, that'll be speeding in the pits. Puts a spanner on his comeback race. As Benjamin goes running through Masters and into 9. Other places on field, Jordy Peters and Liam Walsh, the name that I was looking for before, Walsh, close together. That is virtually the battle for third. They have pitted, same for Michael Thomas actually and Tesh Fredriksson. They do have a little bit of traffic ahead of them that haven't stopped yet, and I think that's Moraki that we see just no. That's Gali that we see just ahead of these guys. It just looked so familiar, the car. Gali comes into the pits this time around. Still Nilsson Abrenosa, they could catch up to very close down the main straight. Into Tarzan we go. Peters on the inside, Walsh on the outside. Not quite there for any of the drivers, as they both nailed their braking points to perfection. But they have caught up to slower traffic, or traffic that haven't pitted yet. So on worn tires, that's Nilsson Abrenosa. If Jordy Peters can get ahead of Abrenosa and leave Walsh behind, then he could potentially gain a good second or two, as they both actually go through Abrenosa there. Very, very tricky place to do so, but they both keep it together and go through without contact, no slide outs either. Very high skill driving from the three of these drivers, also for Abrenosa to gauging the speed and getting that corner right. That can be so damn difficult once you are behind the wheel of these cars. But Peters still ahead of Liam Walsh. Quite the gap up to Fredriksson and Michael Thomas ahead of them. So it will probably be the battle for third and the final podium spot for these drivers that we're looking at here. Would probably take a little bit of a miracle at this point for Fredriksson to catch up to Michael Thomas, who also sits with the fastest lap of the race. Cox still with the drive. I wonder if he tried to save it and got another one, as he have dropped to 22nd. What was that? Was that a mistake by Walsh, as Peters looks very, very clear all of a sudden? Maybe just a tiny one, as he is still right there in frame as we came through Tarzan. Yellow flags, it's the number 17 car this time around. Can't see him in the top 23 at least. So that would be Castello further back the field. Of course, that's short yellow. Abrenosa into the pit, same for Conti, which leaves Vivard and Kiala as the only drivers yet to take their pit stop. They're currently sat in 11th and 12th. I think Vivard is just gambling on Skivligali coming out in traffic, and he will gain by being in clean air, though he does have Kiala right behind that could challenge back there. But Walsh is still pushing hard on Jordy Peters. But with two drivers that are this closely matched in pace and skill, it will be very difficult for Walsh to get this move done. It could potentially be overtake of the season if he does make the overtake without Peters making a mistake. But for Walsh, he just needs to keep close to Peters and keep applying the pressure, and then the opportunity might come later on. as long as he can get Jordi Peters out of his comfort zone, then he does stand a chance. And I think that's the advantage of being the chasing car. You don't really feel a lot of pressure when you're behind, but if you're ahead of another car that's running this close to you, then you can definitely feel it through your bones when you're driving. From the roof of the beautiful Porsche, looking at Walsh from Peters' roof, roughly what he would be able to see in his rear view mirror. As he does have a little bit of room between them now. Not that much that he can be super safe, he still needs to push it, but this is the time where it could be won or lost. 23 minutes remaining in the race. Both in so good through Masters. It's interesting to see how the speed difference are between the very top and the very bottom of the drivers through Masters. I think that's really the corner where the biggest difference is, and where the most time is gained / lost between the categories of drivers around Zandvoort. Oh, we haven't mentioned all race. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button, and hit the bell for notifications of when we go live. Further down the field, Conti have pitted and are under pressure from Wouter Vince, as they are running close together. Into the hairpin they go of Hugenholz. I wonder if Vince can get this done. McLaren not known for being the easiest cars to get the overtakes done with, and I would assume everyone is running almost the maximum downforce around here. But look at that run, very good run into Masters. Not the easiest place to get it done, but if you can push someone out of the racing line by showing yourself and maybe forcing them to look a bit in the mirror, then you could have the big opportunity into 9. But still behind is Wouter Vince. Looking for the outside, trying the slingshot, getting the better acceleration on the throttle earlier. He does look to be closing a little bit. Can he go for the big dive into Hans Ernst? Looking for it. No, not quite. He backs off and stays behind. It is so risky because you are turning in so early to the corner. And Zandvoort is a quite narrow track. But very close into Comho. And Aria Lundijk next up. Vince very close, but I think he would have had to give a little bit of a lift there to keep it on track. As we can see how Conti is pulling away down the start-finish straight. Vince trying to show himself, putting, or at least trying to get the fear onto Conti that he could potentially have come there. Lamers still in the pits. We did see a little bit of flash of yellow on the start-finish straight. That could have been Lamers retiring, which is not optimum, as there are just 4 cars left in the AM class, and that would be good points finishing in 4th. But Wouter Van Dosberg have retired, but I do think Lamers will keep it in the pits if he's not moving shortly. But Wouter Vince still with the big pressure on Conti. This time we have a little bit of a bigger gap between them into Masters, and if Vince can get that speed there, but not a lot. They do both have a little bit of extra room on the exit, so they could have carried potentially a bit more. Claria comes into the pits, which leaves only Shuk with Vard left out there on track. I think if I was with Vard, I would probably take the pit stop soon, as the tire wear will definitely have started to kick in on that BMW. Again, Vince with good speed into Hans Ernst. Did put a Conti off a little bit there as he missed the apex, which is one of the main things. Battle in the bottom right hand side of the screen, that is Peters and Liam Walsh. Meanwhile, we are also focusing on the Conti versus Vince battle in the big screen. But 2 very important battles for the race. No one more important than the other one. Vince this time with a good run out of Tarzan. He could set it up into the hairpin, but very difficult to do so. He would have needed to be a little bit closer and force the side-by-side earlier. Does not choose to go for the higher line to try and set up the speed. He lost it a bit there on the exit, elsewise he looked to be having the overspeed coming out of Hugenholz. But it chooses to stay a little bit behind, but this is a pretty good distance between them into Masters, if Vince gets it perfectly. But again, gap close, look at that, how close they go through Masters. This time I do think Vince could potentially try the opposite move of what Conti is doing. Vivard, I think, might have been listening in on the stream as he dives into the pit. Finally, we should say, Vince going for the wider approach, which gives him the better run out of 10. And look at that, this time Vince is definitely close enough to go for it. Inside, outside, which way will he go? But backs out again. I think a little bit of too high risk. I don't think Vince was entirely sure of where he would have Conti into the corner, and then just opts to keep fighting instead of risking the big accident. Quite aware driving there from Bouncer Vince. And good defensive driving from Conti as well. You are allowed to move like that on that straight as it is bending as it is. So he was just keeping his line basically, so nothing wrong with that. And look at that, it's into Tarzan. We haven't seen the big moves there yet, but Vince needs to get the run out of Comho and then full focus on staying behind. The 992 car have gone on to causing a yellow flag down the road. That's Jordy Peters! Peters returning to the garage. What happened to Jordy Peters there? Big moment in the race. That basically hands P3 to Liam Walsh at this point. But Vargas within 5 seconds, if it's something that can be challenged for a potential penalty, we'll have to wait and see on that. Van Dosberg and Lamers there into the garage still also with the retirement. But Jordy Peters there, RTGs from that one, so that must have been a huge hit to the car as he drops down the running order as we are speaking. But Vince still trying to get the pressure on Conti, not succeeding as of yet in getting anything done. Conti have been doing a good job of getting good exits and focusing on the defensive drive on Bouncer Vince. But the thing is, with that for Conti, that would be that he does struggle to break away. Here we have a replay of what happened. Following Jordy Peters and the blue flag car up ahead. Let's see what happens. Peters goes up, looks to the inside and... Whoa! Ghosting through and then gets smashed into a wall. That is... I don't think I've seen that before. It looked like the back marker was completely untouched by that. That's probably one of the strangest things that I have seen on ACC in all of my time. Very, very unfortunate for Jordy Peters. It did look like that the lines was converging a little bit there. But yeah, very, very, very strange situation. Do understand why Peters might be a little bit upset about it. But again, from the Aston Martin's point of view, I'm not even sure with when you can go through like that, whether or not that he could actually see Peters in game. Ooh, contact this time, yellow flag just up ahead. Causing the contact there, Bouncer Vinci did look for the move and looked like he could potentially get it done on Conti. But instead, maybe being a little bit distracted by the yellow, causing the contact and then dropping so far behind. Down to 23rd, that's Nilsson Abrinosa who now got through. Other battles are raging on the track. This is basically a 3-horse battle with Loop, Van der Kran and Milan Dumont ailing not far behind. 15 minutes to go. We are getting into the business point of the race. I think Milan Dumont might have been the car that caused the yellow. Does look like the same car, that purple one. So maybe... No, that was Mockery then that caused the yellow, not Milan. But Milan with the big speed there on Van der Kran. Trying the outside line there through 9. He did get it set up nicely through Masters, as we've seen, or I've talked about before. That's a big opportunity if you can get a better run through Masters. But let's see the run down the back straight. Milan Dumas on Martin van der Kran into Hans Ernst. Not quite close enough this time around. Both of the drivers in Ferraris. So nothing between them car-wise, at least performance-wise. There could be some setup differences in the two cars that might cause the different strengths and weaknesses, and maybe just the two preference of driving style. But machinery-wise, it's the same from the factory. The 44 spun in turn 1. I think that's Steve Parker's, the Drift King himself. Maybe not doing the best of drifts to then. As we can see how they are coming together, they're almost through Tarzan. That definitely makes this a 4-car battle with Brem Loop leading the train and Matt Ayling being the caboose of it. Further up the field, looks like Nick Vargas actually have gone... No, that's Wolf Garcia and Von Liebstein. Yeah, Von Liebstein down in 7th position. And that would be Benjamin King in that battle as well. So a double 3-way battle going out on track. Or one of them is actually a 4-way battle if Brem doesn't manage to pull that gap away that he is looking to achieve a little bit of at the minute. Into 9 and Ernst Hans Ernst in the same time. But this is the difficult part for Milan Dumas. If he tries to attack too hard on on Martin van der Kraan, then he leaves the door wide open for Matt Ayling. Matt Ayling currently set in 2nd in the silver class, so he might not be too interested in pushing too hard and risking anything at this point, as this would be very good points for him. Meanwhile, Von Liebstein on the outside, they're trying it on Wolf Garcia, but doesn't succeeding. As Von Liebstein still behind Garcia as they went through Tarzan and rounding the hairpin. Meanwhile, Dumas and Van der Kraan coming into Tarzan as we are speaking. Not quite close enough for a move if no mistakes happen. But Matt Ayling, they're actually looking to take the much better line of the 3 of them through Tarzan, keeping the car on the apex. But Brem Loop haven't really managed to break away. He did seem to have a little bit of a gap at one point, but that have come right back down as they are close together and have formed a bit of a train once again. The Brem Loop train, we should call it at this point. And then the battle for 6th in the bottom right hand screen. Von Liebstein close into Hans Ernst, but not quite close enough. Meanwhile, backmarker traffic getting out of the way for the other battling group. I think that could have been Parker maybe in that purple Porsche. Von Liebstein very close out of Ari Lundijk. This could potentially be the move. He's definitely closing coming into Tarzan. Liebstein showing himself a little bit on the inside, but not quite close enough, as he does have to back out of that one. Meanwhile, Dumas, Van der Kraan and Matt Ayling close together as well, as they come through Ari Lundijk, as Matt Ayling goes wide, which leaves the 2 Ferraris duking it out into Tarzan. Dumas showing himself, but not quite close enough though. Unfortunate there for Matt Ayling, who'll have to do all the hard work of catching back up to this battle again. This could be a good time for Milan Dumas to really give it all to get the move done, as he have no pressure from behind and not that much risk involved in overtaking, as he is not an immediate risk of losing a position if he doesn't succeed in the overtake. So that could be very, very interesting as they are coming up to the very, very fast corners of turn 9. Super close together. Different lines. Van der Kraan goes wide. Contact as he tries to drift it back on track. Dumas stays behind and brakes to try and avoid the extra contact. But then with Ayling running on the outside, he couldn't go there. So he was sort of forced to do a little bit of contact there with Van der Kraan. Very unfortunate for these guys. It didn't look like a contact per se. It just looked like Van der Kraan lost it a little bit there. Hard to say from the camera angles though, but very unfortunate for that. Good battle as they were having a massive one. I think that's Chris winning right behind. Meanwhile, further up the field, Von Liebstein and Garcia catching up to more back marker traffic with Benjamin King chasing them down behind. As they're a very good race. Another driver we haven't spoken that much of this race that are doing quite well would be Alderman. Not that we're going to look at him at the minute because we have this massive battle further down, but Alderman doing the Mark Webber race of old, where we doesn't really see him but manages to get good results nevertheless. Von Liebenstein very close up through Slots marker. Into 7 we go. Ooh, a little bit of a slide that looked like that from the Honda. Maybe the best of those tires are starting to go away. But these drivers, they're so equally paced and equally skilled that not much in it there through Masters. It does look like that Von Liebenstein have a little bit of a pace advantage over Wolf Garcia. But I don't think it's enough for Von Liebenstein to overtake without Garcia making a little bit of a mistake somewhere. We do see it every time we come into the overtaking opportunities. Garcia just that little bit ahead. Replay here on board with Milan Dumas. Let's see what happens to Van der Kran. Brakes. Then he just loses the no contact, and then not until that point, but hard for Dumas to do much about that. And then Van der Kran's car just comes running back onto the track without much control there from Van der Kran. Not much different Van der Kran could have done either. And Dumas being a racing driver, he went for the move when he saw an opportunity, and then unfortunately the car drifted in front of him. Could have been a tad bit more aware, but hard to be in the heat of battle. I don't think I would have done anything differently there from Van der Kran, even though I would like to sit here and say that I would obviously just have braked and avoided the contact, but honestly I don't think I would have thought much about that. But this time very close again with Von Liebenstein and Wolf Garcia. Benjamin King have fallen behind a little bit to this battle group, so it could end up being just Garcia and Von Liebenstein duking it out. Von Liebenstein, who was in the battle for third earlier on in this race, but having dropped quite far away from that. Ooh, a little bit of slide there as Von Liebenstein really tries to push it to get a good run out of turn 10. But pushing it a little bit too much and got the slide on. But that would have possibly been the opportunity, as Garcia didn't have the best of brakes into Hans Arndt there, as he didn't make the apex quite. See how close they are to touching the grass. I think that's literally millimeters of the curvature of the tires between the curb and the actual grass there, or run-off gravel trap. Again, Von Liebenstein not quite close enough. He's definitely also running a lot of aero on that car. Let's see what happens of this battle between them. Again, super close through sector 1. It does look like that from Tarsen and into Hugenholz that Von Liebenstein does have a little bit of pace there, or maybe Garcia is just not that quick through there, we should rather say, because Benjamin King is also catching up through sector 1. Not that I would be ashamed of losing a little bit of time to Von Liebenstein and Benjamin King, as they are massively good drivers. Both of them up there in the championship battle, or at least in the top 5 of the championship heading into Zandvoort. But if Michael Thomas wins this race, then he will have mathematically secured the title, because he will have 4 wins to his name, which means it doesn't matter where he finishes in the final race, the point tally will be the same, as he will have a drop result as well. As this time Von Liebenstein actually gets it done through Hans Arndt there into Comho side by side. Von Liebenstein will get hung out to dry on the outside through Ari Lundijk. Can they do it without contact? Looks like it, but big speed force that could potentially put Benjamin King directly into this. I think Von Liebenstein might be safe, but Benjamin King trying it there on Garcia, and Garcia just backs out of this as Von Liebenstein goes wide. That gives Garcia the opportunity to strike back side by side through the first sector. Not quite. Von Liebenstein does keep position, and Garcia settles in behind Benjamin King not getting the full advantage out of that, or any advantage, we should say, as he maintains 8th in that situation. So now, let's see, does Van Liebenstein have the pace to pull away from it from Wolf Garcia? And does Benjamin King have what it takes to get past Garcia as well? Did look like that Garcia braked early to just be super safe into turn 1 and not risk anything with King before. But maybe not so much in the bottom right-hand picture. I think that is Chris Winning and Milan Dumas that we're looking at battle for 13th in the race. Also super tight between the two of these drivers. If you remember Winning with the drive-through early on, he's on the big comeback drive and have done rather well, we should say. As he have caught back up to Dumas and duking it out for 13th position. So I just need a bit of water there to cool my throat. Benjamin King with the very good run through Comho, and Ari Lundijk goes for the inside of Garcia. Makes it basically one lap and done if he gets this move to stick. On the inside though, side by side. This can get very tricky. Garcia choosing to stay in there side by side still, as this time Garcia will have to back out of it. Benjamin King gets himself up into 7th position then, late on in the race. But a big gap up to Van Liebenstein. I don't think he will be quite capable of catching up there with just 2 minutes to go in the race. But for Wolf Garcia, it didn't look like that Benjamin King was that much quicker earlier on in the race. So maybe Garcia can stay with Benjamin King and re-challenge for it. But meanwhile, all this happening, many battles out on track. Bounce wins that we have seen a lot of so far today, right in the back of Abrinosa. Under 2 minutes to go. As these guys are running quickly, following the Vince and Abrinosa battle quite closely, as we can see. That's Alderman behind that will be coming up to lap them in a not that long. Cohen Geens also not that far behind. This could be a matter of whether or not that Alderman actually catches up, because they'll just have a maximum of 2 laps at this point. I'm not entirely sure where Michael Thomas is on track at the minute, but when he passes the start-finish line next time, it will be a final lap that he will get. He will get the white flag, of course, that'll be, but Vaughn wins on the offense on Abrinosa. Also a shout out to Skavligali, who have even with a not super clean race. I think that Nart Cox have lost it now in turn 9. That was the cleanest of races. He's still hanging on to that lead of the AM class. That will be very huge for his championship chances heading into the final round at Valencia. So that will be very good for him. Yeah, that is Cox that have gone around going into the yellow flag, so now wins behind Abrinosa. I wonder if Cox have run out of fuel or something since he have parked it there, if he's just letting the cars go through. Cox is moving again, so he was just trying to wait for a gap in traffic. As they are running, Michael Thomas starts the final lap as we are speaking. Just behind Bas Van Melis, directly ahead of him on track. Van Melis, whether or not that he will allow Thomas to go through to have 1 lap less in the race. Maybe not the best, because if big penalties happen to the drivers ahead of Van Melis, and if he's a lap down to them, it won't matter too much, to be honest. So if I was Van Melis, I would try and stick it in there to try and keep position ahead of Michael Thomas, as Thomas sails through there. Maybe Bas just wants to get this race over with. Probably not a race that he will ride home about. One that he will probably want to try and forget. Van Liebenstein in the pits on the final lap of the race. What's going on there for Van Liebenstein? That cannot be good. Must have miscalculated the fuel. He will drop very far down the running order. Maybe he just forgot to save fuel in that battle with Wolf Garcia. Very, very unfortunate there for Van Diemenstein. He's just dropped from the jacks. Ooh, that hurts a bit when you're racing and you make a mistake like that. But Michael Thomas, just a few corners to go. Chris winning, 1 lap to go to try and get this done on Milan Dumas. Dumas can be a tough nut to crack, to be honest. So he will definitely not just give this one up. As Michael Thomas comes onto the start-finish line to take his 4th consecutive win. Very dominant performance this time around again from Michael Thomas. Puts it in there to win the race and mathematically secure the championship with 1 round to go. Skivodegali also confirmed as the AM winner of this race. Vermelis also having finished it out. Strong performance there from Michael Thomas. Haven't seen much of him in the race, to be honest, after the start. But if only Peters had been able to keep that move stick early on, then it could have been a completely different race. But winning right in the back of Dumas as they're coming around. Last real overtaking opportunity. Jordy Peters takes 2nd, Walsh in 3rd, Vargas 4th, Alderman 5th, Benjamin King 6th, getting gifted that position from Van Diemenstein later on. Garcia 7th, Partis 8th, Arf 9th, and Loop rounds out the top 10 and wins the silver championship. What? It's Fredriksson in 2nd. Sorry, not Jordy Peters. Peters retired. Yeah, I just forgot about that. But it's Fredriksson in 2nd. But a Loop winning silver and Matt Ailing 2nd. Patrick Blisters in 3rd there. AM class, that's Skivodegali that wins. Shuk Vavard in 2nd, and Brent Lamos rounds out the podium there, being the final of the AM drivers to complete the race. Great racing we had this evening. We did see the difficulties of overtaking on Zandvoort coming through, so very, very difficult for the drivers there to get done. But they still did manage to give us one of an interesting one this evening to watch through. But yeah, super race. And only I think the only thing that didn't make the championships closer was, of course, Michael Thomas winning the race. But I think silver and AM will be super tight heading into the final round in about 2 weeks' time on Valencia. That is definitely a race that I'm looking forward to myself to be commentating on, as that can do nothing wrong in my eyes. Surely that will be the one to watch. But yeah, let's see if anyone joins in for interviews. We'll just give them a little bit of time still, as we get some highlights running in the background of the start. I don't know who we're actually following here in this particularly starting moment. McLaren quite far down the field. That's Misha Mellis, I believe. Getting through there, and do remember to tune in on the next Wednesday as well for the LMU race round 2. That will be Monza. 1 hour of racing there before the Sunday Championship finishes off on the 18th of May. And with a great race at Kota. Looking forward to that. Some drivers love it, some drivers hate it, but definitely guaranteed to be super dramatic when we go there. Championships on the line and everything to play for. Again, big congrats to the three winners of the race, the 3 class winners, and all of the podium runners, everyone who succeeded in the race as well. I have been Oliver Anderson, Mr. One of Oliver, and behind the cameras, as always, Grandpa Chris Hill.